Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. We talk a lot on this channel about different people and what their ranks were and what their jobs were on the ship. So today's video is going to be about what the heck that means. But first, here's a word from the museum.
Good day, everyone. I'm retired Navy Captain Walt Urban, and I'm coming to you live from the Battleship New Jersey. Currently, I'm sitting in the captain's import cabin on this mighty dreadnought, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about the history of this magnificent warship. New Jersey is the most decorated battleship in the history of the United States Navy, having served in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and during the Cold War, earning a total of 19 battle stars and campaign ribbons. Now she's a museum and has been here for 20 years almost. I had an opportunity to serve on board her during the refresher training in February of 1985 during reserve duty. I was a ship's public affairs officer and was returning to her in February of 1991 during her deactivation. And at that point, we were pretty much saying goodbye to the battleship for the last time, not knowing whether or not she would be scrapped. But people in New Jersey rallied, raised enough money to support her, and now she's here at the Camden waterfront, open to the public, and soon, once this COVID thing is behind us, and we're looking forward to the day when we can resume normal operations. But in the meantime, we took a heavy hit financially, and we're looking for support financially from you folks, friends of the battleship. So if you could please help us out financially, we'd certainly support you. And we will refer you to our website where you can go and help us in that regard. Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Have a great day, and go Navy.
The military, of course, has a bunch of different ranks and ratings. And they're different depending on which branch of the military you're in. So I know a lot of our viewers are former military or have relatives who are former military and maybe know what the Army ranking system is, but not necessarily the Navy system. So today's video, we're going to go over what the different ranks are and how they compare. So, first off, there are three different types of rank systems. Enlisted, which go from E1 to E9. So the lowest rank, E1, would be your private or your seaman recruit or whatnot. We'll go through that in more detail. And then there are warrant officers, which tend to be WO2 to WO4. Warrant officers are a special case. They tend to start out as enlisted, but they are so expert and so specialized in their job that they are made an officer, but not quite a full regular officer. They only specialize in their one thing that they specialized in as an enlisted person. So typically, warrant officers will mess with regular officers, and they'll have officer berthing compartments and whatnot, but their rank structure, their pay structure, everything's a little bit separate. A warrant officer probably won't go on to be in command of a military unit, captain of a ship, etc. On this ship, as built, warrant officers had their own mess and their own berthing spaces separate from both officers and senior enlisted. By the 1980s, that space had been swapped out and they were just with the rest of the officers. So I'm not going to say anything else about warrant officers. That gets us to line officers, which, remember, enlisted is E, 1 through 9. Officers are O, 1 through 10 in this case. Officers tend to have a college degree. They've either been through one of the various service academies, or they went to college with a Reserve Officer Training Corps program, ROTC. They are supposed to have a higher education, and their job is more management, command, paperwork sort of stuff instead of actually repairing the ship. or aircraft or whatever the case may be. So, starting with the enlisted ranks. At the bottom, the Coast Guard and Navy have seaman recruits as their E1, seaman apprentices as E2, and then just seamen as E3. Whereas at E1, the Army has private. At E2, the Army also has private. And at E3, they've got PFC, or private first class. The Marine Corps has private at 1, PFC at 2, and then Lance Corporal at 3. The Air Force has Airman Basic at 1, Airman at 2, and Airman First Class at E3. Now, those ranks are still striking. They're usually your E1 is when you go into boot camp, although some people with outside experience might go into boot camp at an E2 or possibly an E3. But by the time you actually come out of boot camp, you're an E2 or an E3, and then you go up from there. These ranks are also fairly easy to advance from. In the Navy, in addition to your rank, you also have a rating, which is what specific job on the ship you're trained to do. Are you a gunner's mate? Are you a boiler technician? Are you a quartermaster that drives the ship? So rank and rating are two separate things. You are a bosun's mate, and you're also a petty officer first class. So you are a bosun's mate first class. So the rank would be Petty Officer 1, and then the job title would be bosun's mate. You handle a lot of lines and painting and deck stuff. Other services, besides the Coast Guard, don't tend to have the specializations there, like in the Navy. And the Navy has gone back and forth about removing ratings entirely over the years. For the service life of this vessel, ratings were always in use. And sailors berthed on this ship based first on their rating and the division that they were in, and then second on their rank. For the Navy and Coast Guard, your next couple of ranks are pretty simple. E4, you're a petty officer third class. E5, petty officer second class. E6, petty officer first class. So you're starting to get into senior enlisted by a E6 rank. You'll probably be in charge of a compartment or a group of junior enlisted sailors, and you'll be striking for non-commissioned officer. For the Army, E4, you're a corporal. E5, you're a sergeant. And E6, you're a staff sergeant. In the Marine Corps, at E4, you've gone from lance corporal to full corporal. E5, you hit sergeant, and then at E6, you're a staff sergeant. Meanwhile, the Air Force, at E4, you're a senior airman. At E5, you're a staff sergeant. And at E6, you're a technical sergeant. All right, so at this point, you're starting to hear a lot of the same words between the land services versus the sea services, land and air, although they're showing up in different places. How did that happen? Early on, the Marine Corps and the Army had basically the same rank structure. However, the rank structure was not nearly as granular as it is today. Talking about going back all the way Civil War and earlier, there just aren't that many ranks. You're a private, you're a corporal, you're a sergeant, and there are some other ranks. But the whole idea of a 9-rank structure with multiple levels of private or sergeant comes relatively late in the game, by the point in which these services have diverged and created their own cultures. And so even though they have the same rank and pay scale, the words become different. The Air Force was a part of the Army Air Corps during World War II. And so they had basically the same rank structure there. But then when they became their own service branch immediately after the war, they wanted to differentiate themselves a little bit more. And so they added the airman structure and changed up where their various sergeant ranks were compared to the Army. Likewise, Space Force, if it gets off the ground, Space Force will differentiate itself from the Air Force most likely. And I've heard rumors that they would go to a more naval ranking structure. So much like the Marine Corps is part of the Department of the Navy and uses more Army ratings instead of Navy ratings, Space Force as a Department of the Air Force branch would differentiate itself with more of a naval ranking structure, most likely, compared to the Air Force's more terrestrial ranking structure. I predict that they will be Spaceman Basic, Spaceman, and then Spaceman First Class before they start going into the naval structures, petty officers, and whatnot. At E7, in the Navy and Coast Guard, you become a non-commissioned officer. And that's where you go from being the petty officer, first, second, and third, to being a chief petty officer. And today we're actually in one of the chief petty officer berthing spaces on Battleship New Jersey. This space is used during our encampment program. And you can see it's slightly different from normal berthing. They have a little bit more room in their coffin racks because they don't have the storage space under it, but they have significantly larger lockers. So for the Navy and Coast Guard, at E7, you're Chief Petty Officer. At E8, a Senior Chief Petty Officer. And at E9, you're a Master Chief Petty Officer. At this point, we should also mention there is such a thing as a Command Master Chief for each command, and that is a title, not a rank. That would be the Chief Petty Officer who has the most service experience, the most time in grade of all of the petty officers, and they are the senior enlisted person on the entire ship. So on the Battleship New Jersey, they have their own office, and that's the sort of place where other enlisted guys can go for counseling and to air complaints and things that they might not want to take directly to an officer. And the Command Master Chief has a relationship with the officers where they can go and address these problems. And that's more or less the job of non-commissioned officers leading junior enlisted men. They act as a bridge and a buffer between the officers and the enlisted men. So in the Army, you've got your Sergeant First Class at E7, your First Sergeant at E8, and your Command Sergeant Major at E9. At E7, you've got the Venerable Marine Gunny Sergeant. At E8, First Sergeant for the Marines. And at E9, Master Gunnery Sergeant. Meanwhile, for the Air Force, Master Sergeant, Senior Master Sergeant, and Command Chief Master Sergeant. So that brings us into commissioned officers. So for the O1 rank, you start off with Ensign if you're in the Sea Service, and Second Lieutenant if you're in a land service or air service. If you go to a service academy, you would start out as a cadet or midshipman, and that would be in place of your E1 rank, so that by the time you graduate, you're usually at an E2 rank as opposed to that E1. For the land services at E2, you're now a First Lieutenant. For the Sea Services, you're a Lieutenant Junior Grade, or JG. All right, so we get to the O3 rank, and the land services have captains, which is abbreviated CPT, and the Sea Services have lieutenants, LTs. If you want to skip ahead, you'll see that the Navy and the Coast Guard also have a rank of captain a little bit higher up the list. That is abbreviated CAPT, and it's an O6 rank as opposed to an O3 rank like the terrestrial ranking system. At O4, you've got lieutenant commanders for the Sea Services and majors for the land services. At 5, the Sea Services become commanders, and the land services become lieutenant colonels. And then at 6, you've got captains for the Sea Services and colonels for the land services. A colonel tends to command a regiment. A captain tends to command a ship. These tend to be commands of about 1,500 individuals. It's also worth mentioning at this point that the skipper of the ship, the person in charge, is usually called captain, and on a battleship they would be a captain. On smaller ships they might be a commander, lieutenant commander, or even a lieutenant on minesweepers and smaller vessels. So there is both the rank captain at 06 and the title captain, which is more of an honorarium for someone who commands the ship. So just to further confuse that whole rank. Now you're getting into flag rank at 07. Flag officers have their own flag, traditionally, that for a sea service you would fly from your flagship, so they know where to look for orders. For a general officer, when they're standing there on the battlefield, they would have a flag bearer, so everybody could look to them for orders. It's less common nowadays, but traditionally that is why they are flag officers. And you've got Brigadier General or Rear Admiral Lower Half. Initially, Rear Admiral Lower Half was a Commodore, and Commodore also sometimes means just the senior captain in a group of ships. So nowadays, Commodore is not a rank, it's more of a administrative title for the senior captain in a group of similar ships. So a group of 4 destroyers might have a Commodore who is administratively in control, but not like in charge like an admiral would be of these ships at sea. At the 08 level, you have a regular rear admiral or rear admiral upper half and a major general. At 09, you get to a lieutenant general or a vice admiral. At 010, you're just admiral or general. And then there's a special rank above that that has been created in wartime for some very specific individuals. You are General of the Army or Fleet Admiral. Only a very small number of people have ever held those ranks, and not all of the branches have even had people attain that rank above 010. And then there's also an even more honorific rank above that, which would be General of the Armies, Admiral of the Navy, which has only been awarded posthumously to George Washington and to General John Pershing and Admiral George Dewey. So that brings us to stars, stripes, and bars. At this point, you've seen the rank insignia that flashed on the screen when I've been talking about all of these various ranks. Enlisted personnel get a series of stripes for their different ranks, and by the time you reach NCO, non-commissioned officer ratings, you tend to have 3 of those chevron stripes, and that is when you earn your stripes. And then you'll also have additional markings above that to show ranks above that you attain. Officers tend to get bars in the lower officer ranks, 1 bar, 2 bars, and they tend to be gold for the lower ranking and silver for the higher ranking. Don't ask me why that is. And then when you become a general officer, you start to get stars. We recently did a video on U.S. presidents and the ranks they attained. Check out the link in the description to see which of our presidents attained the highest rank. Which rank did you like best? Which one do you think has the greatest amount of privilege with the least amount of work associated with it? Let us know in the description down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State. We also receive operating support from a number of other public and private institutions and individuals, including viewers like you. If you like what we do and would like to support either the museum or our YouTube channel, there's a link in the description for ways you can donate. Your donations have allowed us to make multiple videos a week, and remember to like, share, and subscribe so that you're notified when those videos come out. Thanks for watching.